Hey, yo, we back, live and in full effect, because you know where we at. We at WECB, the underground sound of Emerson College. And you already know at 2, it be your boy Brian Award, a.k.a. Bishop Toussaint. So you already know where we at. You already know what we doing, because you're listening and you're also tuned in to Live from the Dungeon. You feel me? Wait, hold on. Let me hear myself real quick. Let me hear myself. There we go. Oh, my God. Yo, it feels so good to be back. I apologize for the absence last week. I had other businesses to attend to, and once again, I apologize because I wish I had time to still come back and do the show, but that just made this show a lot more special and a lot more important because we aren't just talking about hip-hop. We aren't just playing hip-hop. We are about to indulge, dive in, explore, experience, understand, realize the growth and the beauty that lies within the beginning. And there is no better speaker, conductor, musician, MC, lyricist, hip-hop documentarian, hip-hop teacher, my mentor to do it other than Paul Willis himself. And if you don't know Paul Willis, my man, my mentor, has been around ever since you could think about Boston gaining its flowers or realizing that Boston should have been received the acknowledgement on the flowers we gave to the contribution of hip-hop. You feel me? He teaches people like myself, kids, teenagers, adults, your mom, my uncle, whoever, all in between, you feel me? And this ain't no joke, because on top of that, he's an author. You feel me? He recently just dropped a book called Hip Hop Leadership, and it's also an album. So if you want to tune into his recent drop, come on, you got to educate the mind on where hip hop really is and what it means to be a hip hop contributor here in Boston, Massachusetts. So without further ado, please let's acknowledge and let's give the flowers and let's give our ears to the one and only, my mentor, a true titan in this city, Paul Willis. Come on,
Thank you.
man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bishop, man, this is so dope to be up here, to engage with you because this is your craft. You know what I'm saying? And,
Hey.
All of our work kind of together outside of the space when we think about, whether it's hip hop, rapping, music business, and leadership, community, all that kind of stuff. But, to see you at work it's a special thing. So, yeah, man, let's get into it.
Hey, man, yo, there's just so many things we could get into, but it's just like, yo, the one thing I want to get into is because as much as I ask you questions, there's questions I purposely didn't ask you and I know this all ties within the book, so all the questions I'm about to ask, you literally explained in the book. So, knowing that this conversation is about the book, because this book is not just going to be in the hands of artists, but it's going to be in the hands of teachers, students of the game, whether if they're on the mic or in the business rooms making the numbers, math, you feel me? So it's like, how did you get into hip-hop? And this all, I just want to say, before we really start the conversation, this all falls within the first chapter, self-identity and authenticity, or did I get that wrong?
Authenticity and self-expression.
Authenticity and self-expression. You heard it from the man himself. So if I butcher it, please flame me up. So, literally, authenticity and self-expression. This all falls within the first chapter, and I didn't dive into the first chapter as much because I want to buy the book, but it really spoke so much volumes. And I would love to know what made you the MC you are today, and what separates you from the MCs that you look up to when you first realized that you wanted to be an MC.
Yeah, no, I think the first thing is this understanding around when you step to the mic, right? People are looking to hear what you got to say, right? And in the beginning, MCs were there to big up the DJ, right? To rock a party. But ultimately, folks would try to separate themselves by trying to figure out who had the best, most clever rhymes. And so when I started, it was very much like, looking up to my favorite MCs. We try to mimic, what we heard on the radio. But when my friends would get together in middle school, we would, freestyle or what I thought was freestyling. You know what I'm saying? My friends were biting other people's rhymes and bringing that to the cipher, which is a no-go. You know what I'm saying? But,
I've been there. I feel you. I've been there. I was on the other side of that.
You know what I'm saying? So look, I was there writing rhymes every day, trying to get my bars up. And we had a middle school talent show. I was in the 6th grade, and I really wanted to showcase what I could do. And so my sister was married at the time, and so we were sitting, me and her husband at the time, we were sitting in his Honda Accord. And when we were sitting there and he was listening to my rhymes, he was like, yo, like, there's certain things I got to teach you about the art form. And one of my first lessons was around counting bars. You know what I'm saying? Making sure like punchlines, how to set them up, how to land them, and all of that. And then he taught me about, just this idea of like, don't try to pretend to be something you're not, right? Don't pretend to be tougher than you are. People will try to test you, and so don't fake the funk. Don't be anybody else. Be who you are, right? Like rap about the things that matter to you, that you are interested in, because that's ultimately what people want to hear. You know what I'm saying? You could always try to say something that seems cool, that seems slick, but if you love to read, like that makes you cool. You know what I'm saying? If you like to ride your bike in the neighborhood, if y'all love sneakers and shoes, like talk about those things, 'cause those things really what's going to separate you from everybody else. And so, while my favorite artists, and again at the time it's like Bad Boys running the 90s, you know what I'm saying? So Big, Mace, we're listening to Jay-Z and a whole bunch of artists, right, during that era who are hot during that era. But all of those artists were also like drug dealers, rapping from like this really kind of wealthy, rich perspective. And I'm like this poor kid from the neighborhood. I can't rap about selling drugs. I don't sell drugs, right? I can't rap about driving around in a Bentley. I'm not in a Bentley. I got to walk to the bus. I got to put, some nickels and dimes together to get to the train. So, that's the kind of stuff that I had to rap about. Reading, writing, riding my bike, my family, my culture, all that kind of stuff. And, that's really kind of served me well. I wrote for years without knowing anything about how to produce a record, what a studio was. I just did not know anything about the process. I just knew that, I could buy my beat CD, from the Jamaican store. I could get this $10 microphone from Radio Shack, plug it into the back of the boombox, and hit record on a tape deck and press play. And I could, dub these like mixtapes, these early mixtapes. And that was the best we could do at the time. You know what I'm saying? I had all these records, but it really wasn't until, I started rapping in 98 until maybe 2010, when I actually got into like a recording situation. My friend had a MacBook and equipment set up at his crib in Somerville, and we got like 16 tracks done in like 4 weeks. And, he was mixing and mastering for a couple of months, and his computer crashed and we lost everything, from that first project. But it taught me a lot just about process, and that I was, ready and prepared after so many years of not ever having access to a studio, but that this was something that I wanted to take more seriously and at least give myself a good attempt at it and kind of see where it went. But that's kind of, the early years and the foundation of that. You look up, released my first record, maybe 2012, 2013, that summer. And while it didn't consist of any of the first kind of songs that I had written, it really showed me that I have this passion. I'm willing to pursue it. And when I had the actual physical CDs, I went out, I bought the jewel casing. You know what I'm saying? I burnt the CDs myself. I made 50 copies in that first run.
Wow.
I had the stickers, and I put the stickers on the CD and signed the CDs, printed the covers out, you know what I'm saying, over at FedEx or whatever. And so, really kind of hands-on in that process. In my first gig, I sold 35 of them things, and I was like, I need more. You know what I'm saying? I got to reinvest this money I just made back into getting more of this product and starting to kind of figure out, you know what I'm saying, the math and the numbers behind what it takes to kind of build a business out of this. So, those were the early years of getting started, but it started with that lesson of like, be true to who you are, because that's what people want to hear. You know what I'm saying? When you're fake on a microphone, that energy that's exchanged in hip hop between the MC and the audience, you know what I'm saying, it feels disingenuous, and people don't really feel it the same. They might party to it, they might dance to it or whatever, if it's a bop or if it's catchy, but that doesn't mean that they feel it and that it's important to them. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, nah, I do, because while you was talking and explaining your origin story of why you started taking rap seriously and how, I'm over here thinking like, that's why the class hip hop leadership was the way it was. Like, I've been to a few hip hop workshops, once I realized that hip hop was something that I love to take serious. Like, it's not just a passion, it's not just an escape, it's not a therapeutic art form to me. It's something that I really want to express. And the two workshops that really, or should I say the two workshop organizers that really made an impression on me was you and Devin. And Devin, I remember, and I still have it in my rap book. Devin talked about the music business and DistroKid. Mm-hmm. That's why signing up with DistroKid to me was a lot easier, because he already broke down the information. But still, around that time, I was doing just as you was doing. Like, I had a friend, shout out Khalid, aka Swevin. I would go to his spot and I would record, songs that I would find beats off of YouTube, whenever here and there. And all I really knew was just writing and standing in front of the mic and delivering the lyrics. And then, watching my boys, and also Saza. Joe Saza was there too, helping me out with my projects. Shout out to him, because we was in the same place working on our projects together. And the more I'm like doing that, the more I'm realizing I'm like, there got to be more to this. But I never had the comfortability to, figure it out. And then I run into you with Devin, I believe, summer of 2021.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah, it was Key's first performance, where Steph and Cam was hosting an event, right? And I forgot the field, but it was by Malcolm X Boulevard Park. I believe that's the name of Malcolm X Park, in the field. And running into you that day, it was just like, yo, Devin, this is your right hand man. He was talking about you, and then seeing him run up to you. I still talk about this till this day. It really made an impression on me. But what really solidified that was when I just randomly pull up on Joe Saza, like, yo, where you at? Oh, I'm at the Record Co. Doing hip hop leadership. All right, cool. I'm pulling up. I mean, all right, that was his response. Yeah, pull up. All right, I pull up, and then I see you again. Mm-hmm. But this time I felt like I came in at a good time, because what you was talking about was exactly what was going through my mind. How could I find myself without losing myself?
Right.
And that was the one thing where you was getting on, like, yo, be real about yourself. Turn that weakness into a strength. You feel like talking about that's corny? Nah, that's what you actually need to talk about. And ever since then, I've just been sticking with you. sticking with you. And every conversation I have with you, I learn. And that's why it's so easy for me to tell other people, be yourself. Because I learned that from you. I learned that from all my peers, but you really broke it down in a way where I didn't just absorb it, I actually live it.
That's dope.
So
that's dope. Yeah, no, that's dope. And shout out to Devin Ferreira. Devin Ferreira is an incredible just musician and educator. He
very
raps.
much so.
He plays the saxophone. He teaches at Berkeley, College of Music. And he's out in LA right now, really, trying to get after it and do his thing. And he's super dope. He started rapping in Maine.
Yeah, no, I
and
know about that.
There is no hip hop community like that really in Maine. And so he moved to Boston and started building studios and like Boys and Girls Clubs and
Mattapan Teen Center. Like, come
on! Yeah, and I met Devin in the cypher. And he heard what I was rapping about, and I heard what he was rapping about, and I was like, yo, like, we got a lot in common. Like, we should talk. Mm-hmm. And so we did, and he lived down the street from me is what I found out. And so I was like, okay, we gonna definitely just lock in and make music together and like build on this hip hop education thing. And I don't know if folks realize how expansive hip hop education really, really goes. There are people all over the country who are using hip hop as like pedagogy, as methodology in their classrooms. You know what I'm saying? They're using it for engagement. They're using hip hop as literacy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So people are studying lyrics, music videos, social media, anything that artists produce can be used as like text in a classroom, right? The key is that if the engagement with that text though is inauthentic to the teacher, then it doesn't land with students. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but very much so.
When teachers who are curious, willing to ask questions and engage in the culture and use that material to kind of open students' minds in a language that they understand, it can be life-changing, for young people. I know that firsthand because it was life-changing for me. We couldn't study or read about, I couldn't write about hip-hop artists. I was told as a student that, like, this is not rigorous. You know what I mean? And that's code for, like, this isn't academic enough. This isn't assimilated into, this educational system around, like, standards and what is considered to be legitimate, like, courses of study and things like that.
So bottom line, this ain't an art form people could take serious, nor is it an art form that seems important to the mass.
And what it is really, it's just coded racism.
Straight
know
up.
What I mean? Like that's what that is. It's this is too black. This is not going to help you in your career. This is not acceptable for white standards of respectability or politic or whatever. And what folks don't understand is that, I didn't develop my critical consciousness in school because we weren't talking about race, class, gender, any of these other kind of social constructs. For me, developing that critical consciousness happened through hip hop because listening to Talib Kweli and Mos Def and Common, they're rapping about social issues. They're talking about war and genocides happening around the world. They're putting me on to, Langston Hughes and Maya Angelou and Bell Hooks and all these different authors, because they're quoting them in their rhymes. I'm like, okay, this is dope. Def Poetry Jam had a similar effect, seeing poets of all different backgrounds get up and share their pieces, right? It was like, this is, some of them are rhyming, some of them are not, but it's the elevation of thought, knowledge from people who look like me, people who look like folks in my community, and then these different perspectives that I never would have considered before, right? Like hearing Muslim folks share about what their experience with 9/11 was like, living in a New York City or New Jersey, right? And in the discrimination that they faced, right? The pain and the suffering, for families that had nothing to do with the incident. They're just dealing with the backlash right, of what it means to be in America. And so,
I felt
he,
that. I felt that. I'm not even trying to cut you off. You brought like a whole new perspective to me. That was deep.
yeah. And so when you consider things like that,
Yeah.
and then you consider things like the Afro Latino perspective, right, and you have folks from Puerto Rico and DR with African roots,
Yeah.
and they're able to express that through their poetry. You know what I mean? And they're doing it in songs, but when you look at it in the mainstream, it's like, what is acceptable there? It's like the closer you are to whiteness in the Latin community, then like, sure, we'll elevate you. We'll give you the starring role in this movie, or we'll give you this role in a TV show or whatever, right? And it didn't matter, you didn't have to be Latino, right? Same thing if you're black, but if you play by our rules, then sure, yeah, we'll elevate you. You know what I'm saying? And what I learned and what I saw through hip hop were artists who then became entrepreneurs, and eventually, they were like the CEOs of their own record labels, their own companies. Master P, what he did in the South. When you saw Jay-Z, what he did with Rockefeller, right? And all these kind of things, they flipped kind of the rules of who can access, economic wealth and prosperity and all of that kind of stuff. You realize that the larger game of capitalism here in America really changes the way that we perceive what happens in hip hop culture, right? As if like if you flash money and diamonds and these other kind of signifiers of wealth, then that means that you've made it, and that means that you're successful. And I think what we're seeing right now is this kind of this shift in the culture. It's almost like a cultural reset, where people are like, sure, if you do well for yourself financially, that's cool, but like our culture can't be commodified, right? Like you can't buy and sell this thing. We own it, and so there are certain things that are important to us that'll never be successful in a capitalist system, right? And so because of that, man, as I kind of came up in my career, again, like being in the nonprofit space, youth development spaces, my students were going off to college and dealing with the same racist things that I was dealing with. And I was like, that's not okay. We need to fix this. They would go and get jobs, and the same kind of racist, structures that existed that I saw, I was like, man, like we're still dealing with that. They're still dealing with that. We need some new tools. You know what I'm saying? And what I found when I was working at City Year was City Year, they wrote their culture down. They had a book called An Idealist Handbook. And so you had kind of quotes, sayings, meanings behind everything, from like the color of the uniform to the structure of their pieces, you know what I'm saying? And all this kind of stuff. And I was like, this is really interesting. It was one of the first times that I heard an organization say, we have a set of values that we believe in. You know what I'm saying? Like believing in a cause that's greater than self, like inclusion, like, wanting success for all students and not just some. And so seeing an organization say, hey, like we lead with these values in mind, values like belief in the power of young people. I was like, wow, like how come more folks don't do this? You mean other companies don't have values? What do they value then? Like what's important to them? Is it just money in the bottom line, or is it deeper than that? And so that kind of study of leadership and like, what does it mean to be a leader? Because clearly it's not just about how much money I can make, right? There are some companies that can snap a finger, make a phone call, and $50 million will be on the other line. But that's not a testament of skill. That's just like advantages, privilege, a networking thing. You know what I'm saying? There's like one relationship away from something like that. So so it's not a signifier of how hard you work or how skillful you are or the things that you've learned over time, right? If you are put in the right series of circumstances, that's a realistic possibility for some folks. What I was more concerned with was what kind of people, had access to that type of resources, right? And when you think about what are the kinds of resources that we deserve to have in our communities, is not just a monetary thing, but also like who are the decision makers? What do they prioritize? What do they value? Right? Are they values aligned, or are they forcing assimilation? Are they forcing gentrification, onto our communities to help kind of guide and shape people's perspective? In hip hop, it is very kind of like, anti-establishment, you know what I'm saying? And so this kind of counter cultural, like, there's not really a space where this is ever really felt accepted. Like even early in hip hop and punk rock happened in the same places. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't this mainstream kind of art form. And what I found was that the deeper you study kind of folks in hip hop who were major players, folks who stood up and took a stand, folks who said, you know what, these record label deals aren't beneficial to us. Let's start our own labels. Let's start our own clothing line. Let's build for us, right? They were standing on principles and values. In 2001, there was a group of about 300 delegates who went to the UN, right? And they got hip hop like recognized as an international, global culture. And they created the Hip Hop Declaration of Peace. So 18 principles that kind of guided the culture, right? A series of like things that folks should really be considering as a way to help kind of define what does it mean to be a part of the hip hop lifestyle, not the hip hop machine that is the music industry. That's different. You know what I'm saying? That prioritizes certain people's pockets and not the culture at its core. And when I realized that people were trying to define culture, I wanted to figure out like where that was for us. Where else did that exist? Who were those artists that were doing that? And when you join leadership programs and things like that, they're not doing that. Like Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote The Outliers and Tipping Point, Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great. They're studying corporate and Fortune 500 companies, and they're picking out leadership lessons from these CEOs and their upper level management and staff. And I'm like, growing up, leadership didn't look like the corner office. It didn't look like suit and ties. It looked like my grandmother, who gave everything to be a nurse and a minister in our community. It looked like the bodega owner who was like, yo, if you ain't got money today, it's okay. We'll put it on your tab. You come back, you settle up when you can. You know what I'm saying? It looked like the OGs at the basketball court who were like, yo, it's not safe to play here today. Don't come around. We'll let you know when it's cool to come back. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing where people cared about each other. Yeah. Like there was a code, you know what I'm saying? And it wasn't written down, but there were things that were understood about what it meant to be in community. And I wanted to figure out what are some of those commonalities, and let me share the examples of what that looked like for folks. And so that's how the book happened.
And honestly, me being your student, let alone mentee, me being your student first, because real talk, I started learning from you before I asked you, like, yo, can you be my mentor in hip hop? Not like, oh, could you teach me this and the third? No, you was teaching me so much that I was already answering questions that that I had. Like, for one of them was when getting into Emerson, I felt like that kid back in elementary and middle school who had nothing but hip hop. Now, I had people around, I had people I could talk to and everything, but when it came to like really like trying to not devise but develop a lifestyle that so happens to be a game plan, a living document at that, it was very confusing. It was very hard. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who to really open up to, because every time I opened up to somebody about my plans or my dreams, aspirations, about how I really see what hip hop could do for our community, it was like they got it, but they only got the surface level,
Mhm.
or they were on the same frequency, but the decibels was on a different level.
Yeah.
So that meant
that was my first day of college too.
Yeah.
My advisor, my first meeting with them, she was a chemistry professor. And when I told her some of the things I wanted to do and how I might be interested in sociology, and maybe she was like, I don't know why they send kids like you to me. If you're not studying science, I can't help you. So I walked out. I promise you, this is exactly how it happened. I walked out, and then I never spoke to another advisor again in my entire academic career. Just left. I was done. When the people who are supposed to support you betray you because they are more interested in serving themselves than others. You know what I'm saying? It's really unfortunate, but it's one of the things that when you are a first generation college student and you don't have folks in your life who can tell you how to navigate the system, how to advocate for yourself, and to one, report those people and go and seek other forms of support. If you don't have that, then you don't know. You just feel like, man, I've been betrayed. Y'all did all of this stuff to recruit me or to bring me here, or I went through this whole process and I thought that y'all wanted me, but then y'all just throw me to the side. It feels,
So what was the outcome of after that? You left. You never went to the advisor again. Obviously, you still finished college and everything.
No.
Oh
no, I didn't. Yeah, and so here's the crazy.
What?
Here's a crazy.
Wait, what? What?
Bishop, let me tell you.
Nah, you're playing with me right now, son. Yo, he's playing with us. He's playing with us.
Yo,
nah.
Bishop, yo. So this is crazy, right? What's crazy about this story is, I went like that for a couple years, where I had no academic guidance, no counseling, no nothing.
Yo, this is insane, son.
I got to my maybe end of junior year, going into my senior year. I started to take these courses. One was the philosophy of education.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other was a class called Education for Social and Political Change. And what I heard in those classes were people who, we read books like Jeffrey Canada, right? One of my professors played Lupe Fiasco in class. Jeffrey Canada, he's an educator and had this theory around community schools, right? And so he started the Harlem Children's Zone, right? And so basically he used the school as a community hub. And he had a series kind of resources where families whose children all attended, this school, it was cool. Well, not only do you get access to this education, but if you need food, if you need clothes, if you need college applications, you're looking for jobs and internships, it's became kind of this place where folks and families and communities could go to kind of get the things that they needed.
I'm not gonna lie, that reminds me of Madison with the Rosie Place, Salvation Army, the Boston Student Athletes BSA. It reminds me of that. So did he start there or something?
So just the concept around you can create a zone where all of these kind of institutions, organizations, companies are all serving the same purpose, but that purpose is children and families.
Yeah.
Right? That was something that people hadn't seen. And now even just the concept around promise zones during the Obama administration, that is a direct result of Jeffrey Canada's work, right? Because people saw how successful that was in transforming possibilities, and student realities. So they wanted to do that. When I was in college, though, and I'm reading, Jonathan Kozol and Jeffrey Canada, and again, all this stuff, and then my professor plays Lupe Fiasco, Dumb It Down, in class. And we're supposed to, analyze it and all this kind of stuff. And there are a whole bunch of students who don't come from where I come from, right, in this room. And they thought that Lupe was being for real in that song. And they didn't realize that it was satire in the music video, right? And so when Lupe saying dumb it down, he doesn't mean that he's going to, you know what I'm saying? Or that he wants people to just not be intelligent, right? He wants people to not dumb it down. And he wanted to show folks how ridiculous it was to think in this anti-intellectual way, right? Lupe teaches at MIT right now, as one of the biggest rappers in the world is teaching at MIT. And so he wasn't anti-intellectual, but I had kids in class arguing like, yeah, he is promoting, alcoholism and drugs and gang violence. I'm like, you know nothing about this person. I was like, when you read books, do y'all ever look at who the author is and what their like perspective or life story is and how it frames kind of the work that they wrote about? And I was like, if you would do that for, this philosopher, this author, these folks that you study, then why would you not take Lupe with the same serious that you approach your other academic studies? My professor pulled me after class. He was the first Puerto Rican professor I ever had, advanced degrees from Columbia and Yale. You know what I'm saying? He was just like, yo, I feel you. But straight up. And I was just like, yo, and he was just like, look, these kids are never going to see the world the way that you do. But I see how you come in. I see how prepared you are. I read your work. Also, he's like, you were carrying that basketball trophy from the team that you coach. You talk about kids who you tutor and mentor. He's like, you are connected with community in a way that some of these kids never get off campus. They don't know what's happening in the real world or with real people.
That happened. Bro, before you continue, I swear to God, this is I'm like a spitting image of you if that's the case. Because I swear to God, when I had the imposter syndrome, I couldn't be on campus. Like before I put myself in a situation that robbed me from the campus life for a little bit, I couldn't be on campus as often because they weren't closed-minded, but their self-restrictions was baffling to my freedom. Mm-hmm. I could not fathom their worries. It was just like, bro, what do you got to worry about? I'm from this area you go to school in. I know what it's like. I know, me knowing that, I have everything I have to be paranoid for a reason for. You, on the other hand, bro, experience. And one of the things you keep talking about is music, or you want to be a rapper, be a singer, this, that, and the third, but you don't leave the campus. This campus, back when Emerson was my first experience of it, it was so cliquey that I thought it had nothing to offer outside of education. Mm-hmm. They had hip-hop moments. They had little groups. I was part of the hip-hop society. Shout out to Chris Grant and Christina. But it was just like, yo, I kid you not, I felt like a foreigner in my own lane.
Isn't that wild? And like, here's the thing is that, America has always been this place that has tried to make us feel like we don't belong here.
Yeah.
But it also like requires us to be here.
Because we built the civilization.
The whole thing.
And beyond that.
The whole thing. We've been here from the very beginning. And
BCE and then some.
And people sleep because, the national perception of Boston is what it is, right? But like black people have been in Boston from the very beginning and played super like significant and meaningful roles, right? From Crispus Attucks, you know what I'm saying? I think like Malcolm X, Coretta and Martin Luther King, but almost every famous kind of intellectual speaker,
Du Bois.
Phyllis Wheatley, Frederick Douglass, they've all had to come through Boston at some point in time. And so black people have always played a major role here, but this country, right, has always make it seem like, we don't need y'all, or that you're less than, or that, you just don't belong here. Bugging. And it's wild. Bugging. It's wild. And so that absurd. Like imposter syndrome is not something that I think that we should have. You know what I'm saying? I think sometimes we need to kind of demand our value, right, and communicate what it is that our worth is, right? If we walked away from everything, I don't know what what this country would do in terms of culture, in terms of economics, in terms of a whole bunch of
I
things.
mean, you already see
without
what's
us.
happening. You already see what's happening with the silent protests that we're doing. These companies are losing billions of dollars.
Yep.
And those billions that they're losing, we're investing back into ourselves, and that's a beautiful part.
Right.
But it's also a scary part because why did it have to get to this?
Well, I think that's the one thing is that America's never reconciled its history, and instead it would rather, right? It would rather erase, delete, and
Eradicate.
and gaslight us to believe that like the history is different than what it actually is. You know what I'm saying? But cat's out of the bag. You've never been able to destroy our culture. You've never been able to destroy our stories. And because of the internet, it's so much harder now
For real.
to like try to tell us anything because we're connected with a global economy, a global society. We are communicating across platforms. Go ahead and police one app, through TikTok or whatever. We'll just use another. Twitter wasn't Twitter until black people created, their own
Black
corner.
Twitter.
You know what I'm saying? And then everybody wanted to be in the know and be nosy on Black Twitter to kind of just get a sense of what our culture was like, right? But this obsession with us, it's projection.
Yeah, it's like a fetish, right?
On the behalf of white supremacy.
Yeah.
It's like, they want to know what we're doing because they know how dastardly they were. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like if you ever like owed somebody money, you're like, wait a minute, am I going to run into this person right now? Like, I got to go check to like, they going to be around. If they're going to be around, I got to go over here. You know what I'm saying? It's just like that. It's this idea of like, they did people so wrong. Indigenous communities so wrong. Black people so wrong. What they did with, Latinos and Chinese and, Japanese folks. So many people have been hurt, because of the kind of construction of this country and this very violent and oppressive history.
A fear-mongering country indeed.
Which is why, like, we live in a surveillance culture now. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because any kind of slippage of that power means that, and this is, again, the projection is that we will do to them what they have done to us. Right? And in reality, like, look at every black and brown, you know what I'm saying? Like non-Western, like civilization, right? Countries across the global South. They are not those type of communities. They have a different, set of values and belief system. It's not around scarcity. It's not around, accumulation of resources. It's around
love and passion,
community, right? It's the person's connection with the larger group, or the person's connection and relationship with their faith, right, and their belief system. But it's always connection to something that is greater than the individual self, and that's the difference. And so, because that's the difference, this fear that like, oh, if black or brown people gain control, it means that they're going to then turn around and be this violent community and nation. Mm-hmm. And I would say, look at all the black and brown countries that have reformed or reshaped, post-colonization.
And on top of that, they also had the grace. They had the grace and the emotional platform. Not from what they only developed, but from the people around them that actually acknowledge their contribution. They acknowledge their needs as much as they want them to be around to continue this, so it could grow into a better civilization, let alone a pure society.
Yeah, and Burkina Faso is the greatest kind of case study of this.
Burkina Faso?
Yeah, there's this country in Africa right now that formed alliances with its neighboring countries, and they said, we're kicking out the French and the Dutch.
Whoa!
Yeah, so they did. They're not using French currency. They created their own currency. My man's just built like 55 hospitals, the largest oil refinery in Africa. You know what I'm saying? Like they did all this stuff, and they're like, we're not doing business with, these former colonizers and with the West. We are only here to create things that are gonna serve the continent of Africa.
How come this wasn't talked about?
Oh, it's talked about online in certain circles, but the mainstream media will not cover this.
And that's what I'm saying, because especially if it's online, we already know the algorithm is tuned to block your sense of knowledge with what you find entertaining. Hence why you're constantly bombarded with ads,
right?
Useless or emotionless driven skits or
right.
Comedic
distractions.
Comedic distractions. And then you have all of these things that could give you a sense of realization, a sense of perspective, like a new feeling of acknowledgement,
right?
Enlightenment at that,
right?
Because this just that you saying that enlightened me, not only because I'm Haitian, not only because I'm a hip hop MC, not only because I'm a hip hop documentarian, but because I share a complexion with many others that go through their own form, their own form of oppression, regardless whether if it's physical, emotional, mental. At the end of the day, those things, if it's oppression being used, it's tangible because you could see it, you could feel it,
right?
You have to digest it. Like it becomes a part of our lifestyle, and that going back to what we was talking about, feeling like a foreigner in your own land, that is what brings us to insanity. Because feeling like a foreigner here on college and then going back to the hood, knowing that I'm in college to get away from the hood, I kept asking myself, what am I really doing? And I was getting mad because I didn't know where to feel comfortable.
Yeah, no, it's this interesting thing around like, do I feel guilty because I've survived certain things and I have access to certain opportunities and the people I came up with don't? You know what I'm saying? It's hard. It's hard. But you know who I look to is the Maori, out in New Zealand, and when when we look at their example, right? There was the recent viral video, right, of it was almost like a Congress woman or parliamentary, whatever they call it down there.
Yeah.
But she was young and she got up and they were protesting this bill, that they were trying to, pass or whatever. And she got up and she started the haka and she rips up the bill.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. Crazy work.
Yeah. And so what I thought was super dope about that was that, even though in the same thing, right? Violated treaties, made to feel like, they don't belong or they're not welcome, but they had a call to action. That's what it seemed like the haka, did in that moment. It was like a call to action from young to old. The entire kind of people all understood, like, in this moment, we will not have it. You know what I mean? And when I think about our generation and kind of, where we're at in our world today, I look at hip hop, as like, the reason why it resonates is because it stands for all of these, like, peoples, you know what I'm saying, who all kind of struggle and fight against oppression.
Yeah.
And so to kind of wrap it all up, it's like we need a call to action, right? But that call to action, if it's not going to come in our music, it's got to start with our language. And then it'll come, I think, through our art in some other ways. Our culture is some of the most resilient, in the entire world, right? And it's because it's super relational. But speeding up our kind of timing for connectivity, I think will be an important next step. And it's why I wrote the book on hip hop leadership, because I feel like if we have this words and this common understanding and definitions. And this is, not like the be all end all. It's the start of a conversation that I think can happen globally to really shift and change people's minds about our power to organize and to really kind of remix what's old and what doesn't serve us anymore, and kind of take it into the future. So I'm excited for people to read it and to engage. Hey. It is this conversation.
For real.
This album, this book, and the curriculum, it is this.
Like if I did not have a time limit, I would not want this to end. Like, I'm so into this. Like, yo, everybody pick up hip hop leadership. You feel me? Hip hop leadership. Like, yo, I'm butchering the name. Let me read it to you from the man himself. Hip hop leadership, Paul Willis. You feel me?
Word.
Get that.
And if you are in town, if you are in Boston, Tuesday, April 29th at 6:00, we're going to be at Frugal Bookstore. And so you can either buy it directly from my website, www.hiphopleadershipbook.com. That's where you can get it online, your pre-order right now, or just go pick it up from Frugal after the 29th. And then you can, join us in this conversation. It's a global conversation. It's a hip hop conversation. It's a revolutionary conversation. And with that, we out.
You feel me? For the revolution shall not be televised. Yeah, feel me? Pick up hip hop leadership. Thank you for tuning in. Yo, my mentor, one of my best friends, and definitely a role model that I'm glad that I could call whenever I just need to talk or whenever I need some answers. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Bishop.